begins in Pomona, California, and the sprawling Los Angeles County Fairgrounds. From tow trailers and 18-wheelers, they pour forth. Part car show, part carnival, all racing. The pro stock drivers have arrived for the NHRA Chief Auto Parts Winter Nationals. And the cars they'll use to conquer the quarter mile, Ford Thunderbirds, Oldsmobile Firenzas, Chevrolet Berettas and Camaros, Pontiac Trans Ams, The NHRA Winter Nationals are just the beginning, the first in a 14-event national series called the Winston World Championship. Crisscrossing the country from California to Florida, Texas to Minnesota, the drivers chase $1 million pot of gold that awaits them at the end of a racetrack rainbow. At the close of the season, one driver will stand above the pack as #1. Pro Stock's Top Gun. It takes consistency and perseverance to win the Pro Stock World Championship. The tone of the season will be set in the first 3 national events, the Winter Nationals, the first major East Coast drag race of the year, the Motorcraft Gator Nationals in Gainesville, Florida. And the nationwide Southern Nationals from deep in the heart of stock car country in Commerce, Georgia. The winter has been spent preparing for the challenge. After 3 months cloistered in shops, the drivers are anxious for that first pass, for the exhilaration of acceleration as they leave the line. Of the drivers gathered at Pomona to compete, 4 represent the pinnacle of pro stock, the most inventive, courageous, daring of those who race the ultimate stock cars. Bob Glidden, Warren Johnson, Bruce Allen, Butch Leal, the 4 aces. Unlike the legendary flying aces, these men are quiet, studious. Their demeanors more appropriate to college professors and engineers. To these men, staying on top means taking the cars to the technical edge of the envelope. But there's a catch. These highly evolved, highly demanding cars continually test the drivers, pushing them to grow, forcing them to improve. It's the only way they can manage the mechanical beasts they've created. The beast is tameable. There are moments when man and machine reach a point of understanding where, with common goal, they launch down the quarter mile in a picture-perfect pass. Front wheels dancing, rear wheels locked to the track, shifts right on the red line, the potential of pro stock realized. But just beneath the surface lurks the dark side, the danger. There is no forgiveness, no margin for error in a pro stock car. Cross the line that separates a good run from disaster, whether because of broken part, loss of concentration, or bad luck, and the machine will bite the hand that built it. Bob and Etta Glidden, drag racing's most successful race team, know this from first-hand experience. Less than a year ago, at the NHRA Southern Nationals, Bob crossed over that line. As he drove to victory over Butch Leal in the semifinals, Glidden's world turned over 6.5 times. But when it was over, when they regained control of their emotions, when bits and pieces of a wrecked car were towed away, the Gliddens were able to put the moment into perspective.
Until then, it was something that was always there, but it was one of those type of things that you see and you think happens to other people, but really can't happen to you. On the way home from Atlanta, I wanted to discuss retirement. All he wanted to talk about was getting a car ready for the following weekend.
Last year promised to be special for Glidden. He'd begun with hopes of notching his 50th NHRA event title and a 7th World Championship, 2 feats unprecedented in drag lore. But he struggled through the next 4 events, haunted by memories of Atlanta, losing when he should have won. To be a champion takes a driving hunger most find hard to maintain through a season. Bob Glidden and his crew, headed by wife Etta and manned by sons Billy and Rusty, had proved in the past that they had the desire to win. In the wake of Atlanta, they would try to prove it again. Half the season had slipped away when the Gliddens made their charge for the top. Through the last 7 events of the year, Bob was the class of the field. 2 straight wins, his first of the year at the Mile High Nationals and then the North Star Nationals, set the stage for the U.S. Nationals in Indianapolis, Indiana. A resident of nearby Whiteland, Indiana, Glidden considers Indianapolis Raceway Park his home track. His record at Indy, 10 straight final round appearances, 6 victories overall in the biggest drag race of the year, bears strong testament to his dominance there. Last year, Glidden used his home field advantage to move easily into the finals, where he faced Bruce Allen.
It's Ford versus Chevrolet in the Pro Stock Finals. Bob Glidden in the Thunderbird, Bruce Allen in the Camaro. Both drivers leave the starting line together, and Allen pulls ahead. But Bob Glidden continues to come on strong, and Glidden wins his 6th U.S. Nationals title.
Glidden's 7th U.S. Nationals victory highlighted his phenomenal performance during his comeback. He established a new national elapsed time record and was the #1 qualifier at the last 7 events. Glidden hoped to notch his 50th event win at the Chief Auto Parts Nationals in Dallas, Texas. He again marched through the field to reach the finals, where he was up against Warren Johnson, the World Championship points standing leader.
The defending world champion Bob Glidden in the Ford Thunderbird in the near lane against the Oakville of Warren Johnson. Glidden trying to take the point lead, and he's got it. Warren Johnson with a red light on the starting line. Bob Glidden wins his 50th.
Bob and Etta Bob Glidden have won their 50th NHRA Pro Stock title. How do you feel, babe?
Great.
And more important than that, some points towards a world title, huh?
Yes, yes. We feel really fortunate to be in this position right now after the year we've had.
Glidden's dream of 50 national wins was realized at the Texas Motorplex, and appropriately, the win put him in the points lead for the championship. A first-round victory at the Winston World Finals made it official, but by then the results were academic. Glidden was champion.
After Atlanta, in your wildest dreams, would you have believed we would be having this conversation right now?
Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, I think I made the statement to you at an earlier race. There was not a possibility of us winning the Winston World Championship, but it happened.
Glidden's final round opponent, Ronnie Manchester, summed up the feelings of most of the pro stock drivers about Bob's year.
Would you try to believe on Glidden? I mean, just gamble a little bit maybe in the final?
I win today. If you can be a runner-up here, you might as well finish. You won, because Bob Glidden wins everything. He's really good. He's hard to beat.
Manchester was right. Glidden won the race handily, capping an incredible year that saw him knocked down but not out by adversity. When it mattered most, Glidden overwhelmed, as much by determination as performance. In the end, he had it all, a historic 50th race title and a 7th World Championship. So, as a new season begins in Pomona, everyone is aiming for Glidden's #1.
Well, I think everyone does that at every race. All we can simply do is come here hoping we've prepared well for the race and do the best job we can do getting to the race. And whatever happens from that point on is the way it's supposed to happen.
3 drivers have the best chance to remove the #1 proudly displayed on Glidden's Ford Thunderbird. Warren Johnson, driving an Oldsmobile Firenze. Bruce Allen, in the rare and Morrison Chevrolet Camaro. And Butch Leal, driving a Pontiac Trans Am. Warren Johnson, with the aid of son Kurt, finished 2nd in the World Championship last year. That marked Johnson's 3rd straight runner-up in as many years. Johnson is one of those racers who doesn't look like a racer. He could easily be mistaken for a teacher. Whereas Glidden's success has come as a result of diligence, working harder than anyone else, never letting up, Johnson's success has come as a result of thinking, tinkering, refining. He is an engineer seeing opportunities instead of problems. Each victory is a verification of Warren's theories, each loss a valuable learning experience.
Well, competition is just part of it. The mechanical aspect is probably the satisfying part of it as far as I'm concerned. There are people that are what you'd call pure drivers, and then the competition would be their satisfaction, but not in my case. As far as I'm concerned, yeah, the engineering thing is evolved strictly from my education. I was educated as an engineer, and that's why this category seems to be the most appealing to me.
Last year was Johnson's best as a pro stock driver, as measured by final round appearances and championship points scored. His first of 7 final round showdowns came at the NHRA Winter Nationals, where he lost to Frank Iaconio. He soloed in the finals of the Southern Nationals because of Glidden's crash, and was handed the Cajun Nationals title when Butch Leal red-lighted. Coming into the NHRA Budweiser Spring Nationals, Johnson's car was running as well as it had all year. At the same time, teammate Don Kuntz, in an identical Olds Firenze, was having his best day. The two met in the first pro stock all-team final.
The 2 Oldsmobiles locked together side by side. Warren Johnson in the near lane got a slight lead. Warren Johnson wins it.
The Summer Nationals win, followed by a runner-up to Glidden at the next race, the Mile High Nationals, gave Johnson enough points to lead the standings for the World Championship. Mechanical problems, most notably tire shake, relegated Johnson to runner-up status after that. By the time W.J. lost in the second round of the NHRA Fall Nationals, he had dropped to number 2 in the points standing. Warren's innovations have always made him a performance leader. In 1982, he became the first pro stock driver to surpass the 180-mile-per-hour barrier. Last year, he became the first pro stock driver over the 190-mile-per-hour mark, establishing a new national speed record at the U.S. Nationals. Three years of watching others grab the brass ring has fueled Warren Johnson's determination not to come up short this year. Of the 4 top contenders, Bruce Allen is the only hired gun. He took over the driving chores of the famed Rare and Morrison Chevy Camaro following the untimely death of Lee Shepard in 1985. For 4 straight years, Lee Shepard was the ace of aces, dominating pro stock with partners David Rare and Buddy Morrison. After winning 3 modified stock titles, the Texas-based team moved into pro stock in 1976. It took the Texans 4 years to adapt to pro stock, but when they did so in a big way. Shepard won his first pro stock title at the 1980 NHRA Winter Nationals, and after that, the wins just kept on coming. Bob Glidden had dominated pro stock in 1978 and 79, and until the emergence of Lee Shepard had seemed a shoo-in for the 1980 World Championship. No one doubted these two were fated to meet head-on in a big way at the U.S. Nationals.
Here are the players in the greatest single-season rivalry in the history of drag racing, especially in pro stock, Lee Shepard and Bob Glidden. You guys have raced each other every major event this year. What's the score? How many have you won?
We won 5 so far.
And that leaves you with?
Only 2.
What happens if you win here today?
Well, it'll still go down to the last race.
Where's the World Championship?
Right.
What happens if you win, Bob?
Well, if we could win this particular run, we'd leave here with about a 200-point lead.
And Bob Glidden, red light. Lee Shepard bans his lead for his first ever World Championship.
What you're looking at is undoubtedly the 1980 World Champion in Pro Stock Eliminator, but most importantly right now the U.S. Nationals champ. Glidden red lighted.
Yeah, I thought I got a good light. I didn't see how he could leave that, that quick. I didn't see the red light, no.
You have left on him and beat him with slurry tees a couple of times this year. I think that put extra pressure on him, don't you, to leave on time?
Well, I guess it did.
A season of NHRA championship drag racing is an endurance test. The 1980 Pro Stock Championship would go to the man able to go the distance, with the finish line, the World Finals.
Lee Shepard against Andy Manarino, and Shepard has problems on the starting line. Manarino wins.
Shepard's loss opened the door for Glidden, who needed to defeat Frank Iaconio in the finals to earn his 5th championship.
Bob Glidden with a big lead over Frank Iaconio. Lots of pressure on Glidden, but it didn't show on the starting line. Glidden wins the race in the World Championship.
Glidden would later say the 1980 World Championship was his favorite because he had to battle from behind to win it. But for Rare, Morrison, and Shepard, 1980 became a rally cry as compelling as Remember the Alamo. For the next 2 years, Lee Shepard was unequaled as a driver. He won 12 national events between 1981 and 82, easily claiming his first 2 world championships. A driver's abilities can give him an edge, but to win as consistently and convincingly as Lee Shepard also takes muscle. To develop the muscle, Rare, Morrison, and Shepard pioneered new cylinder block, head, and manifold designs that powered the Camaro to national records and 26 pro stock victories. In racing, the more successful a team is, the harder the competition chases them. In 1983, the rest of the field started to catch up to Rare, Morrison, and Shepard. Camaro campaigner Frank Iaconio matched Shepard point for point throughout the season. When the national tour pulled into Orange County Raceway for the last Winston World Finals held there, Shepard trailed Iaconio by a few points. Whoever went further in competition would be the world champion.
Lots of pressure on Lee Shepherd in the far lane in his first round race against David Hutchins. A close race at half track, but there's the Shepherd horsepower. Shepherd wins it.
Shepherd's first round win kept him in contention and put the pressure on Frank Iaconio.
The World Championship could be riding on this race in the first round of competition at the World Finals. Frank Iaconio in the near lane in the Chevy Camaro against the Dodge Daytona. Reed Whitson, and look at the whole shot from Whitson. A tremendous lead off the starting line, and Frank Iaconio loses the World Championship.
Lee Shepherd, I think, a little stunned himself, not to mention Frank Iaconio. Apparently, Iaconio has been beaten, and you've done it again, world champion.
Well, I'm glad we didn't have to do it. I was pretty nervous today.
That's quite a surprise that Reed Whitson would put him out first round. I don't think anybody expected that.
No, that's a real surprise to all of us.
On racing's emotional balance sheet, the disappointment of Frank Iaconio at having come so close only to fail was matched by Rare, Morrison, and Shepherd's celebration for their third consecutive Pro Stock World Championship. 1984 ended in equally dramatic fashion. Coming into the World Finals held at its new home on the Los Angeles County Fairgrounds, Shepherd would have to outlast Warren Johnson to claim an unprecedented fourth straight championship. Johnson had won 5 national events during the year, twice besting Shepherd. In Lee's favor was the awesome consistency of the Rare and Morrison Camaro. As in 1983, the world champion would be the man who survived the longest in eliminations.
More pressure than normal on this first round race. Warren Johnson in the Oldsmobile, the Ford of Ricky Smith. It's a close race. The Ford begins to pull ahead, and Johnson loses.
With Johnson's loss, Shepherd could pen his name into the history books if he got by Joe Lapone.
A lot riding on this race for Lee Shepherd. Could be the world championship. He's racing Joe Lapone. A close race to the finish, and Shepherd wins the world title.
In the span of 8 seconds, Lee Shepherd made history with his 4th straight Pro Stock World Championship. Victory is a drug, and Rare, Morrison, and Shepherd found the more they had, the more they needed. And to get it, they would have to go to the edge. Then, tragically, in March 1985, Lee Shepherd crossed over the line. While testing in Oklahoma, Shepherd was killed when his car flipped over just past the finish line.
These are the 16 quickest Pro Stock qualifiers here at the Gator Nationals. As you will note, it is a missing man formation out of respect for the late Lee Shepherd. We ask everyone to join in a moment of silence as a tribute to Lee Shepherd.
Bruce Allen responded immediately to the pressure of following Lee Shepherd. Stepping up from the modified stock ranks to drive the Rare and Morrison Camaro, Allen won 3 national events in 1985. Despite missing the first 2 races of the year, he finished 3rd in the championship and established himself as a top contender. The leading Chevy Camaro was in the thick of the championship battle all last year, thanks to solid, consistent performance by Allen. He made it to the semifinals of 7 national events, and to the finals 3 straight times. He lost twice to Glidden during Bob's late season charge at the North Star Nationals and the U.S. Nationals. After knocking Glidden out in the 2nd round of the NHRA Castrol Keystone Nationals, Allen was favored in his final round matchup with Don Beverly.
What a surprise pairing in the finals of the Keystone Nationals. Bruce Allen in the Camaro, but Don Beverly driving his Pontiac Trans Am Firebird. A great race. Beverly right alongside of Allen, and Beverly with the upset.
The runner-up points from the Keystone Nationals and points scored in the last 2 races of the season helped Allen finish 3rd in the standings. The highlight of the team's year was the Mr. Gasket Pro Stock Challenge, held during the U.S. Nationals. The 8 competing drivers for this special eliminations race are determined by points awarded for qualifying positions in the first 9 events of the year. Bruce Allen won the inaugural Pro Stock Challenge in 1985, defeating Butch Leal in the finals. Besides Allen, other cars that competed last year included record setters Bob Glidden and Warren Johnson, who both went out in the first round, Gordy Rivera, Joe Lapone, and Leal. When the smoke had settled after the semifinals, Allen and Leal were again matched in the $15,000 first prize shootout.
For the second time in his career, Bruce Allen, driving the rare and Morrison Camaro in the far lane, is in the finals of the Mr. Gasket Pro Stock Challenge. This race could be decided on the starting line. Butch Leal, one of the best drivers in the sport today. Great reaction time. It appears he's off the mark first. But Allen's got the horsepower.
He left first by about 200, they tell us.
Yeah, Butch is just a good leader. I'm doing good to stay that close to him, believe me. I haven't been doing that good this year driving, and we just really needed this victory for the rear Morrison team, Levi Garrett, Chevrolet, and rest of our sponsors, Goodyear, and just really appreciate it.
Having proved he could beat the best, as he did in the Mr. Gasket Pro Stock Challenge, Allen seems ready this year to take the rare and Morrison Camaro back to the top. Of the 4 aces, Butch Leal is probably the best pure driver. Through a career that has spanned 3 decades, Leal has driven everything from modified and super stock cars to early funny cars. Known as the California Flash, he earned his reputation on the starting line with almost supersonic reflexes.
If I can win, that's what it's all about. You know, in Pro Stock, there's a lot of fast cars. You know, the world champion Bob Glidden, we got Warren Johnson and Bruce Allen, Rivera and Morrison, I mean, and myself, and we just all battle it out. We're going track to track every week, battling each other and trying to beat each other. And that's what it's all about with me. I mean, that's what I'm into.
Number 4 in the World Championship last year, Leal led the standings at the season's halfway point, but he struggled through the rest of the year, dropping out of serious contention by the end of the season. When Leal was running well, he seemed almost unstoppable. Unfortunately, the first 2 times he made it to the final round, he stopped himself. A red light by Leal at the Gator Nationals gave Don Campanella his first national event win. At the Cajun Nationals, Warren Johnson scored an easy win on a Leal red light. For a period, Leal and Johnson were the 2 hottest drivers on the national tour. A week after they had raced in Baton Rouge in the Cajun Nationals finals, they were lining up in Columbus, Ohio for the finals of the Spring Nationals.
Johnson and his Oldsmobile leads too soon. The red light glowing on the starting line. A reversal of the race a week ago. Butch Leal is the winner.
It's about time we got in the winner's circle for everybody. We're here at hometown, and this Castro Nationwide car did it. And all the guys at the shop deserve all the credit. I'm just in here driving, that's all.
Did you go to the starting line with a little different attitude than a week ago, saying, don't do it again, Butch?
No, what I did last week is, the lane choice was a little different down there. Here they were pretty equal. And what I did is, I gambled last week. I went 1, 2, 3, I let the clutch out, and I rolled snake eyes. Well, today I said, I'm not going to do it anymore. I can't get by with it.
Leal followed his victory at the Spring Nationals with one at the Grand Nationals Molson in Montreal. But after that, Leal's performance was hindered by mechanical problems. He dropped from first in the standings after the Summer Nationals to 4th by the Winston World Finals. A relaxed, happy-go-lucky attitude belie Leal's intense drive for victory. He begins the new season confident that his consistency problems have been worked out and that he has the power to win. Last season showed how competitive pro stock racing has become over the past few seasons. More cars showed up to qualify for the events, and the performance level of all the cars was higher. Qualifying at Pomona this season proved this. 35 drivers showed up to qualify for 16 spots, and after Thursday's session, Bob Glidden and Warren Johnson were on the outside looking in. Both made the field on Friday, both establishing new track records in the process. Johnson, in the number 2 spot, ran 188.2 for the top speed track record. Glidden nailed down the number 1 spot with a record 7.425 elapsed time. Despite their record performances, neither man really had a lock on the event. As impressive as Glidden's qualifying run was, the number 16 qualifier, the man on the bubble, was only 15/100ths of a second slower. The man sitting on the bubble is Larry Morgan. As the performance potential of the cars has equalized, a growing number of drivers, Morgan among them, have realistic chances of being top contenders. A former champion in Superstock and competition eliminator, Morgan moved up this year. It's rare for a brand new team to immediately score big in Pro Stock, partly because of the intensity of the competition and partly because of the complexity of these hand-built racing machines. It takes experience to bring together the almost infinite number of elements that make up the car's combination, the various ingredients that must work in unison. It starts with the engine, 500 cubic inches of massaged muscle. The drivers get the power to the ground through Lenco 4-speed transmissions with changeable gears to compensate for conditions. To keep it there, 4-link suspensions allow the drivers to fine-tune the chassis for various tracks. It usually takes a new team a year to learn the art of tuning a pro stocker and be truly competitive.
Everything's different in a pro stock car. I feel I need a little time to learn how to drive it because I'm basically not used to all the power, and it's quite a bit different, but I will be used to it. I wanted to get into professional category. You know, I just felt like that if I was ever going to go anywhere in drag racing, this would be it.
Morgan knows it's going to take time for him to adapt to his new car, to get a feel for its setup. But he hopes to be competitive early in the season, relying heavily on his Superstock and Comp Eliminator driving experience. Another driver primed to move into the top echelon of Pro Stock is Gordy Rivera, who finished 10th in the world last year. Best known for his super quick reflexes off the starting line, Rivera represents the spirit of the class, its competitiveness and its challenges.
I get a lot of satisfaction out of going a little quicker and competing with these guys. I think anymore now today, even qualifying in Pro Stock is a real big challenge. And I think a lot of people in the line are noticing that. I would like to be up there also with the Gliddens and the Johnsons and what have you. And I think I'm moving towards that direction.
A veteran of the Pro Stock wars since 1973, Rivera's best year was 1985, when, on the basis of consistent performances, he finished 5th in the world. Through his career, he has developed a reputation for surprising upsets, beating quicker and faster cars with hole shots.
Gordy Rivera, out of Yuma, Arizona, driving the Chevy Camaro in the near lane, has got his work cut out for him. He's racing against the reigning world champion, Bob Glidden, and Glidden gets a little out of shape. Rivera pulls ahead, and Rivera wins the race.
Oh, boy, I love it. I can't believe it. I didn't think I could do it with him running so fast, but I guess anything's possible out here.
Were you rolling the dice maybe a little bit up there?
I tried a little bit. I gotta grant it. I was trying a little harder.
Oh, tremendous job.
Thank you. Thank you.
While he awaits a new Chevrolet Beretta, Gordy Rivera has borrowed the Camaro of Bob Harris, put his engine into the car, and qualified number 6 for the Winter Nationals. Another driver with great promise is Joe Lapone Jr. Lapone has the right stuff to be a top contender: good starting line reactions, a knowledge of chassis setup, and the counseling of legendary Pro Stock guru Bill Grumpy Jenkins. Considered by many the father of Pro Stock, Grumpy Jenkins' innovations helped shape the cars as his philosophy shaped the category.
There were a lot of us that came out of the old super stock ranks or the factory experimental ranks and things that felt as though there was a area in drag racing that we could, promote and produce a program that would sell that involved something that you could fairly well attach to a given factory name. And it had to be a heads-up deal of some sort. It couldn't be some kind of a bracketed or a handicapped thing like the super stock thing had turned into.
Pro Stock's roots lie in the early 60s, when the Detroit manufacturers discovered drag racing as a sales tool. The factory warfare was carried out in the highly competitive super stock and modified production classes, where the car's stock appearance allowed fans to identify with the individual makes. Success on Sunday, sales on Monday meant Ford, Chevrolet, and Chrysler were willing to go all out to win. The top drivers, the men who championed the cause of the car companies, were the men who became Pro Stock's original aces. For Chrysler, the leading proponents were a promoter named Buddy Martin and a driver nicknamed Mr. Four-Speed, Ronnie Sox. Through the mid-60s, few could match the performance of the Sox and Martin Chryslers, and certainly no one was quicker at shifting than Ronnie Sox, the undisputed king of the quick shift. One of Ford's top field reps was Dino Don Nicholson, a longtime stock racer famous for both his driving ability and his dyno-tuned engines. Nicholson's professional career began in 1961 at the NHRA Winter Nationals. Nicholson followed his super stock win in Pomona with one in Indianapolis for the U.S. Nationals. Although famous as a Ford ace, Nicholson was a Chevrolet racer until 1963. When Chevrolet stepped temporarily out of racing, Nicholson made the move to Ford and Mercury, driving a rocket-quick Comet, first as a wagon and then as a coupe. To Chevrolet fans across the country, Bill Jenkins was the man. His nickname, Grumpy, grew out of his abrupt style of dealing with people who tried his patience. His reputation as the master wizard of engine tuning came from his remarkable success on the track. Jenkins' competition signs were familiar sights on Chevrolets during the mid-60s. In 1965, Grumpy was responsible for 35 national records, either as a driver or engine tuner builder. A strong-willed genius, Jenkins elevated stock car racing in the mid-60s to an art form. In 1969, partly because of a desire for new creative challenges, Jenkins, Nicholson, and Sox created a heads-up, no-breakout match race series called Super Stock. The success of the match races prompted the sanctioning bodies to adopt the cars as a separate eliminator category, dubbed Pro Stock. By 1972, a specialized breed of cars was developed especially for the new class. The first Pro Stock cars were really converted A-modified stock cars. Soon the cars had tubular frames, sophisticated suspensions, and special clutchless four-speed transmissions. The first Pro Stockers were running 990 elapsed times. As the racers turned their energies toward perfecting the stock car, performances increased noticeably. By mid-1973, Pro Stock elapsed times were in the low 9-second range. The domination Sox and Martin enjoyed in the stock classes carried over to Pro Stock. Through the mid-70s, they were the top professional team. Ronnie Sox's skills remained as sharp as they had been in his super stock days, and in 3 years he netted 7 NHRA national event titles, 5 in 1971. Sox lost a little of his edge with the advent of the Lenco clutchless four-speed transmission, which allowed the drivers to shift second through fourth gear without engaging the clutch. The transmission equalized the class, but Ronnie Sox continued to win. For Dino Don Nicholson, success also followed in pro stock. As a leading Ford campaigner, Nicholson's performances on track were highlighted by sharp driving and record runs. Perhaps his best year in NHRA competition was 1977, when he appeared in 5 of 8 national event finals, winning 3. His dominating performance that year earned him the World Championship and helped secure his status as one of pro stock's true heroes. Pro stock seemed tailor-made for Bill Jenkins, presenting him with almost unlimited opportunities to create, to experiment, to overwhelm. As a pro stock driver, Grumpy won 10 NHRA national events. As a car owner, he watched Larry Lombardo win 3 national events in 1976 and the World Championship. Through it all, Jenkins watched the class he envisioned, the class he helped form, mushroom into a technological marvel. By the mid-'80s, the pro stock car had evolved into a purebred racing machine lurking beneath a streetcar skin. Sporting exotic materials, space-age innovations, and engines ranging in size from 500 cubic inches to over 700 cubic inches, depending on the sanctioning body, the cars have progressed from 10-second, 140-mile-per-hour chuggers to 7-second, 190-mile-per-hour streakers. And of course, the original aces are still part of the sport, most notably Grumpy Jenkins. His relationship with Joe Lapone Jr. can only bring positive results for Lapone as he works to establish himself in pro stock's top echelon.
If you look at the fact that, once we leave the start line, we shift 3 gears, we're in a 4-speed, and we're in high gear in 4.7 seconds. It's amazing how much you can really relate to. I can know what I shift at, what the oil pressure is, you just get into a little routine. I act on instinct and experience right now. You don't really get scared. Like, I've had a lot of close calls, I've had some things go wrong, and you don't have time to get scared, you just act on instinct. If the car makes a good run, you could probably get in the car and drive it. Bill and I could talk about the better part of 10 minutes on what happens in a 7-second run. From what he sees from the outside, and I relate to what I feel on the inside, and that's why we're as successful as we are as a team.
The pairing of Joe Lapone and Grumpy Jenkins dates back to 1982, when Joe moved up from the modified ranks to drive for Grumpy. Their best showing was at the 1985 Winston World Finals. After beating Bob Glidden in the semifinals, Lapone squared off with Bruce Allen for the title.
And Bruce Allen leaves the starting line too soon. It's a red light. Joe Lapone winning his first ever pro stock title.
Number 5 in the World Championship last year, Joe Lapone, with the guidance of Bill Jenkins, should be a top contender again this season. For the pro stock drivers, the call has come. A new season of racing begins. Each starts with a clean slate. Last season's thrilling victories, heartbreaking defeats, agonizing setbacks all behind them, pages and scrapbooks better left unopened until the winter. The past is a prelude, an indication of what might come. But each knows that from here on in, his destiny is his own. Each will look to prove himself. Each will reach for his moment in the sun. They focus on the goal, the desire to be top gun, and launch themselves into the battle. The Chief Auto Parts Winter Nationals is among the oldest of NHRA's national events. The first major race of the year, it attracts fans from all over the country. Over 54,000 of them pack the grandstands, as hungry as the drivers for the winter's peace to end and the competition to begin. For the drivers, these final moments before the first round are for nail-biting, second-guessing, and butterflies in the stomach. The first round is always the hardest because of the uncertainty. A new day, a different track, and the knowledge that racing is all about anything can happen.
First round action in Pro Stock Eliminator, the Castrol Oldsmobile of Larry Morgan against Joe Lapone Jr. The whole shot goes to Morgan in the Oldsmobile. He's holding on to the lead, and Larry Morgan wins at over 183 miles an hour. Lapone out of competition in the first round. Gordy Rivera using a borrowed car with his friend Bob Harris, racing against Indianapolis Steve Schmidt. There's something wrong with Schmidt's car. He is very late off the starting line. Gordy Rivera has an easy go of it, but he doesn't let off a 7.48 second, 183 mile an hour run for Gordy Rivera. Butch Leal in the near lane, in the far lane, Reed Wisden. Leal is a master of reaction times on the starting line. You can gain a big advantage with a whole shot, reacting quicker than your opponent. And he's done it once again. So Reed Wisden, Butch Leal has the advantage. And it pays off at the finish line by a matter of inches. Butch Leal defeats Reed Wisden. Bruce Allen, another great driver at the wheel of the Rare and Morris and Levi Garrett Camaro. Allen is racing Don Coons. Of course, you got the advantage off the starting line if you can anticipate just the right moment to leave. If you do it wrong, you can redline. That's what happens when you leave the starting line too soon. That one amber light on the Christmas tree stays on only 0.4 of a second. If you leave too soon, you get the red light and disqualification. That's what happened to Bruce Allen. The cars are painted the same. They come out of the Mr. Goodwrench team of Oldsmobile Forenzas. This is the man that finished #2 in the world last year in the far lane. Warren Johnson. Against him is Kenny Delco at the wheel of Flip Benito's Camaro. And Johnson has a big lead. Johnson winning the race handily as the lapse time. 7:43, but over 187 miles an hour. The big #1, the Motorcraft Thunderbird of Bob Glidden. This Ford, the hottest pro stocker in the country, racing against Mark Howick. Both drivers completed their burnout procedures, taking their time about creeping those cars forward into the light beams that stretch across the starting line. When the cars are in the proper spot, starter Buster Counts will throw the switch and send them on their way. The advantage goes to Bob Glidden. As some problems set in for Mark Howick, Glidden with an easy win at a 765, 180 mile an hour charge.
Back in the pits, Bob Glidden and the other drivers go over their cars meticulously. The main goal for the teams at this first race is to shake down their equipment. The primary focus will be on the engine, the heart of a pro stocker.
The NHRA Pro Stock racing is limited to 500 cubic inches and 2 4-barrel carburetors. That's pretty well the limit. And we also run pump gasoline. The engines are highly modified. We weld and we move and we cut and we change things. We develop parts for them. We work on manifolds. Manifolds inside don't look anything like they do on the outside. Nothing really does. But the power levels on a 500-inch motors are approaching 1,100 horsepower.
By the time we get an engine together with a new concept, fully machined, developed, welded, heat treated, and re-put together again, you're talking $45,000, $50,000 for an engine.
There is more than the engine to worry about, of course. Both Bruce Allen and Joe Lapone suffered broken clutches in their first round losses. As the remaining drivers come to the line for the second round, they accept the possibility of parts breakage, but hope they will be spared.
You fans here at the Winter Nationals have got the break of a lifetime. At the start of the season, you get to see the race of the year between Butch Leal and Bob Glidden in the Ford Thunderbird. Leal in his Pontiac, #4 in the world last season. And a great a slower lap time, 7.52 seconds, but his advantage at the start, almost 7/100ths of a second, paid off at the finish line as Bob Glidden ran a 7:45, 186-mile-an-hour run, trying to run down Butch Leal. Larry Morgan driving the Oldsmobile from the Castrol GTX team against the Wayne County Speed Shop Camaro, driven by Darrell Alderman. And Alderman breaks on the starting line. Larry Morgan just starting his career as a pro stock driver. A great showing thus far. He's in the Winter National semifinals. It's the last pair of cars in this round of pro stock competition. Warren Johnson in the Oldsmobile Forenza against Gordy Rivera, driving a borrowed car this weekend. But here he is in round number 2. Warren Johnson in the near lane. Rivera with the advantage at the start. The Oldsmobile's got lots of power, but so does the Pontiac. And Warren Johnson wins the race at over 186 miles an hour. His elapsed time, 7.46 seconds.
Warren Johnson, returning to his pits after the second round, moves with a deliberate pace, almost casualness, as he makes minor adjustments to the engine.
95% of the work is done at the shop, as opposed to the other two professional categories where they come out here and just burn up a lot of parts. That's basically what I refer to as mail order racing. They order parts, burn them up at the track. Well, we have to develop and massage all the parts at the shop.
Our engines, when we get to the racetrack, we have an engine, it's a complete unit. We rarely even change a jet in the engine. We set the valves, we maintain the engine, make sure the valve springs are up to what they're supposed to be, but there's really not much to do to the engine. We have to go through a pretty extensive program before we leave and get the racetrack and getting all the engines up to their expected power levels. You know, our work is mostly done during the week, and on the weekends, it's a matter of making small adjustments.
With the closeness of pro stock competition, even a small change can pay big dividends or mean disaster. For the remaining drivers, the results of the semifinals will determine if the adjustments they made were the right ones.
Tremendous racing at this Winter Nationals Championship in the pro stock category. Don Coons in one of the Team Goodwrench Oldsmobiles coming up to face the Nationwide Auto Parts Pontiac of Butch Leal. Leal has been running exceptionally strong in this event, but then again, so has Don Coons. A great start by both drivers. The advantage actually going to Don Coons, but the power of the Pontiac comes on, and Butch Leal advances into the final. Larry Morgan in the Oldsmobile, burning those huge slicks, getting them hot. That's all the smoke you see coming out of the back of those cars. When they do the burnout, they're literally burning rubber, getting the tires so hot, they'll just grab a hold of the pavement. Warren Johnson has heated his tires. He's coming into the staging beams, as is Larry Morgan, a pair of Oldsmobiles. And Larry Morgan gets the whole shot, but the power of Warren Johnson comes into play as he drives right by him. And Warren Johnson wins to go into the finals against Butch Leal.
As an innovator, Warren Johnson knows that it's the subtleties that bring about the major horsepower gains. He, like many of the other racers, goes to great pains to protect his secrets and maintain the balance of power within the ranks.
That's manifold covers. Actually, we developed those things about 2 years ago, and we innovated some fabricated manifolds. And because it's a normally aspirated engine, manifold science is really a particular concern. So you don't want to give any other team any idea as to the direction you're going as far as manifold development, so you just cover it up.
A lot of the guys have got the manifolds covered with fiberglass pieces, aluminum pieces, cardboard pieces and stuff. Some of it's psychological, some of it's trying to really hide something that you think you have. Some of it, in our case, is trying to hide something that's exactly the same as everybody else's.
Whatever secrets lie beneath his manifold cover, Warren Johnson hopes they will be enough to power him to his first Winter Nationals title. Butch Leal, also looking for his first victory here, will counter with driving ability. Despite its cool, calculating appearance, Pro Stock is about emotion. A win here will be a major lift for either man.
It's time for the final in Pro Stock Eliminator. Oldsmobile, Warren Johnson, Pontiac, Butch Leal. Leal in the near lane, and Leal with the advantage once again off the starting line. But the Oldsmobile power is proving strong. Warren Johnson, your winner, Nationals champion.
The first round of the championship battle belongs to Warren Johnson. Victory, however, means little if it is not followed up with continued success. A country away from Pomona, California, East Coast fans get their first taste of NHRA championship drag racing at the Motorcraft Gator Nationals in Gainesville, Florida. For Pro Stock drivers along the eastern seaboard and into the south, it is a chance to compete on a national level. 43 drivers have shown up to try their hand at conquering the tricky Gainesville track. Gainesville has always been a paradox for the Pro Stock drivers. On the one hand, when the cars are dialed into the track, overall conditions are ideal for record performances. In 1976, Larry Lombardo drove Grumpy's toy to an 8.71 elapsed time record. 3 years later, Bob Glidden motored his Plymouth Arrow to an 8.48 second ET record. But if the car is not set up just right for the track, if the chassis or clutch combination is not the perfect one, disaster is just a heartbeat away. Warren Johnson has had more than his share of difficulties in Gainesville over the years. Coming off the high of Pomona, Johnson found himself humbled by the track in his first 3 qualifying attempts.
This is the last qualifying attempt for Warren Johnson. He is not in the program. The winner Nationals champion is trying to make this Gator National show. And Warren Johnson does not qualify.
Stuff will make you humble, won't it?
One day chicken, the next day feathers. You won the Winter Nationals and you're not even in the field.
It has been a strange week, and we've been at 2 consecutive years here where we just couldn't get down this particular racetrack. We don't know why. We've tried every conceivable combination. We've rented the track, and it's just this particular car just refuses to go down this racetrack. I don't really know why.
Warren Johnson has lots of company in his misery. Larry Morgan was also on the outside of the record 7.536 second field, as was Gordy Rivera. As the first round of eliminations begin, it's apparent that the 2 lanes are not equal. The far lane is providing better traction, while the near lane has become slippery, making it almost impossible for the drivers to get a clean run down it. Joe Lapone finds himself in the near lane for his first round race against number 3 qualifier Gary Brown. Lapone, who was to debut a new Chevrolet Beretta at the race, qualified number 11 in a borrowed car. As the inequality between the 2 lanes becomes more pronounced, lane choice will become a critical issue. Lane choice goes to the driver with the lower elapsed time from the previous round. Fortunately, Lapone has an easy time because Brown red lights. As it turns out, Joe is the only driver to win in the near lane during the first round. In contrast to Lapone is Bob Glidden, who has the advantage of racing in the far lane. Glidden, who qualified number 1 at a track record 7.41 seconds, has had his car dialed in all through qualifying and should get stronger in eliminations.
Bob Glidden has got the win by virtue of the disqualification, and he runs even quicker, 7.40 seconds.
Glidden was the only first-round winner to actually improve on his qualifying times. This was due in part to how well his car was set up for Gainesville. When racers talk about setup, they refer to the chassis and transmission combination. With the Lenco 4-speed transmission, drivers can quick change their gear ratios to compensate for various track conditions. The sophisticated suspensions on the cars are also used to tune it for track conditions.
The chassis is today as important in the Pro Stock category as as us making horsepower with the engine. The Pro Stock cars sit on 4 shock absorbers, or we have suspension on all 4 corners. We have to make adjustments in these shock absorbers. We run with 4-link rear suspensions. In other words, on each side of the chassis, we have 4 mounting points for the rear end housing. By changing the length and the height of these points, it really changes how the car goes down the racetrack.
The more time a team has with a car, the better able it is to deal with the car's idiosyncrasies. With limited knowledge of their car, Joe Lapone and Grumpy Jenkins have to pretty much guess on chassis setup for their second round race. As in the first round, they would have to win from the near lane. Slow off the line, Lapone chases Darrell Alderman down the track, but to no avail. He is out of competition. Butch Leal, the number 2 qualifier, had an easy time in the first round. Staging for the second round, his primary goal will be to ensure lane choice for the semifinals.
Leading out of shape, Butch Leal motors on for the win.
Leal's ET is quick enough to give him lane choice over Bruce Allen in the semifinals. One factor aiding Leal and all pro stockers is aerodynamics. The goal is to punch a hole in the air for the car to drive through. Pro stock teams are just learning aero art, adapting the production car's design to their needs. The first step is modifying the body for competition.
It's the same sheet metal as a standard passenger car. The only difference is it has fiberglass doors, fiberglass front end to get our, we weigh 2,350 pounds, where a standard passenger car Trans Am is about 3,400 pounds with all steel. We have a much bigger engine, but we have a tube chassis and no interior, so that's where a lot of the weight comes. But other than that, it has to meet all the specs of whatever General Motors car you choose to run.
Aerodynamics right now is becoming the edge that you have, the easiest edge to gain now with performance. We've been thrashing on these 500 cubic engines for 5 years now, and the major gains in horsepower, I think, have already been accomplished. It seems that aerodynamics are very important, not only in gaining ET and speed, but also making the car safer at high speed.
Little aero tricks like the hood snorkel that replaced the old-style box hood scoops and rear deck wings that can be adjusted to help traction are just some of the ways pro stock teams are using aerodynamics to improve performance. David Rare and Buddy Morrison know that Bruce Allen will need every trick, aerodynamic or otherwise, if he is to beat Butch Leal in the semifinals. Although Allen has been running extremely well all day, he must now take on the nationwide Pontiac from the near lane. Unfortunately, Leal is too strong, and for Bruce Allen, adjustments to the car are not enough. His day is over. Bob Glidden also advanced to the finals, but he hurt his engine on the semifinal run, necessitating a change in motors. In pro stock, where each engine is put together to the same exacting specifications, it is not a traumatic moment.
We control our horsepower output by just fractions. The slightest little thing wrong in an engine could be 15 or 20 horsepower, or would be the difference between losing or winning or losing a race. If we have a problem, we'll simply take the engine in the car out and put a new complete engine in and go to the next round.
Unlike the funny car and Top Fuel, we have our pistons and to each cylinder, it's matched, where we can't take one piston out and put another one in. It's so tightly matched that we can't do that. So it's much easier to change the engine in 20 minutes than it is to pull the head off and try to figure out how to put a piston in it.
Bob Glidden's engine change complete. He and Butch Leal stage for the finals. It's a classic confrontation of contrasting styles, performance versus driving. Glidden in the better lane with a performance edge through eliminations. Leal in the near lane, concerned about traction, but willing to gamble on the light to outdrive the Ford.
Butch Leal, the World's champion Bob Glidden led life.
Butch Leal set out this season to prove he was a winner. With victory in Gainesville, Leal showed he was going to push himself further and make the competition, most notably Bob Glidden, reach farther to catch him. Drag racing has experienced phenomenal growth over the past 5 years, and if one event could symbolize just how big the sport's become, it would be the inaugural running of the Winston All-Star, an invitational race for the top 10 finishers in the point standings from last year. No championship points are awarded, so the normal pressures of a race weekend are lessened. The drivers have a chance to relax, socialize, and compete for the sake of competing. Of course, there are some who have come to the Texas Motorplex with things to prove to themselves and to others. When funny car racer Billy Meyer built the Motorplex, he set out to create the best little drag strip in the country. The all-concrete racing surface provides excellent traction, providing the drivers can keep the wheels hooked to the ground. Dempsey Hardy, in his last qualifying attempt, experienced tire shake and suddenly found himself out of control and out of luck. Tire shake is a perennial drag race problem. There are no simple cures because there are no simple reasons why it happens. However, with the introduction of recording computers in Pro Stock, teams are learning what areas of the car are affected by tire shake and what kinds of adjustments minimize it. The overall impact of the computer has been to take the guessing out of racing, providing teams with tangible evidence of the car's performance.
In the past, the driver was completely relied upon to say, well, did the car spin? What did you shift at? The computer tells you, how much the tires are spinning, how much the clutch is slipping, where the engine's being shifted, how much it's spinning on the gear changes. This is just a more precise method of recording that.
Reviewing printouts from its last 2 Saturday qualifying attempts, the Rare and Morrison team decide the needed cure lies in the clutch. Confident of their adjustments, they came to the line for a first-round meeting with Joe Lapone. Unfortunately, Lapone outdrove Allen to victory. The best matchup of the first round was between Bob Glidden and Butch Leal, who met up for the 3rd straight race. The Glidden-Leal matchup has all the ingredients of a great rivalry. Competing manufacturers, Ford versus General Motors. Opposing racing styles, Glidden relying on power, Leal on driving ability. And a clear conflict. Both men want to be the world champion. For the fans, it's a matchup that brings emotion to every confrontation. Like all great rivalries, psychology plays a major part. After losing the first 2 meetings to Leal, both costly to Glidden in terms of confidence and championship points, Bob exacted a measure of revenge by beating Leal in the Winston All-Star. Success in Pro Stock requires a mastery of a very complex piece of machinery. The Pro Stock car is often called the most difficult to drive because of all that happens in the cockpit in such a short time.
Well, I'll tell you what, these type of cars are very, I won't say they are dangerous, but they're a very hard car to drive. I don't believe that a person should ever just get into one of these cars without any experience. These cars don't have any room for a lot of mistakes.
Staging a Pro Stocker is an act of intense coordination. Bringing the car into precise position, his left leg works the clutch, his right the gas and brake. He guides the car with his left hand while his right manipulates the line lock button that holds the car on the line. Lurching into position, he awaits the green light. Green, and his foot's off the clutch. He buries the gas pedal, shifts second, third, fourth. And then, in a blossom of nylon, it's over. With all a driver does on a run, concentration becomes all important. he must focus his attention. Nothing can interfere. Nothing can distract. Joe Lapone's concentration had slipped over the past couple of seasons as he made the transition from hired driver to car owner. Coming into the semifinals of the All-Star, Lapone had an opportunity to show he was regaining his driving edge. Matched against Bob Glidden, the world champion, a driver with a distinct performance advantage, Lapone parlayed a hole shot into a stunning upset victory. Lapone's victory came as a result of his concentration on the starting line, the ability to focus so intensely on the Christmas tree that everything seems to be in slow motion helps a driver to leave consistently, a key to winning in pro stock.
Basically what you need to do is to be a consistent driver without guessing. In other words, without pulling up there and saying, okay, Buster's going to activate the tree and take your foot off the clutch. If you can drive 440 to 450 lights, which gives you 0.05 of a second to react from the yellow light to the green light to get your car to move, that's an excellent reaction time. The days of, you know, like Bob and Bill, when Bill had the field covered, he could leave a tenth slower than somebody. Like somebody could leave on a 420 light, he could leave on a 520 light and drive by him. Those days are gone. That's why the excitement's in the stands that we see today when pro stock comes, because the staging and the leaving on a start line is becoming the most important thing.
Matched against Joe Lapone in the finals would be Warren Johnson. Johnson came into the race hoping to prove that his failure to qualify in Gainesville was a fluke. Confidence is a huge part of success in pro stock. If a driver is not sure of himself or his car, he cannot reach the level of concentration needed to drive to victory. Johnson felt a win in Texas would renew his personal faith.
Johnson with a power pulls away first. He continues to hold on to the lead and wins it.
Regardless of the technology involved, pro stock racing still comes down to the driver. And when he's motivated, as was Warren Johnson, winning is the only logical result. As the pro stockers arrived for the NHRA Nationwide Southern Nationals, Gordy Rivera was absent. For Rivera, who sat out the race while awaiting his new car, the start of the season had been a rocky one. But his competitive spirit is not discouraged by setbacks, and he will return. For Bob Glidden, the Southern Nationals represent a hurdle he must clear if he is to continue to be successful in pro stock. First, he must put last year's crash behind him, and then he must find a way to win the one national event he has failed to claim in his incredible career. Fans relate to pro stock because they identify with the cars. Fans are drawn to Bob Glidden for the same reason. They relate to him, seeing in him and his accomplishments a little bit of themselves. In a sport enriched by colorful personalities and flamboyant celebrities, Bob Glidden stands out because he is neither. Quiet, unassuming, he is the winningest driver in the sport. The odyssey of Bob and Etta Glidden, from local drag race hero to superstardom, began in 1972 when Bob quit his job at a Ford dealership and the two went drag racing full-time. A year later, Bob had his first U.S. Nationals title, and then in 1974 and 75, his first 2 world championships. In 78, Glidden piloted a Ford Fairmont to 7 national event wins. The next year, he returned with a Plymouth Arrow and again won 7 races. Coming into the 1979 NHRA Spring Nationals, Glidden had 8 straight victories over a 2-year span.
Bob Glidden in the Plymouth Arrow, going for his 9th consecutive pro stock victory over the last 2 seasons of competition. The Arrow is in the far lane. In the near lane, driving the Chevy Camaro of Bill Jenkins and Larry Lombardo. Lombardo has got the advantage off the starting line, but here comes Glidden. And Glidden wins number 9.
It got tougher on Glidden after that, and although he won the 1980 World Championship, number 5 came down to the last pair of cars at the last race of the season. During Lee Shepherd's 4-year rule of pro stock, Glidden won races, but with less regularity. His consistently best performances came before his hometown fans at the U.S. Nationals. In 1983, Glidden made it to the finals for the 7th straight year, facing nemesis Lee Shepherd.
The most coveted pro stock title of them all, that of the winner of the U.S. Nationals, Bob Glidden in the bar lane. In the near lane is Lee Shepherd. Buster counts and stays those cars. Now they roll into the staging beam, and off the starting line first is Bob Glidden. Glidden in the Ford Thunderbird wins the race and takes home the U.S. Nationals title.
If after 1980 Bob Glidden had never raced again, he would still have secured a place for himself among drag racing's elite. World Championships in 1985 and last year were icing on the cake, chapters 6 and 7 in the career of pro stock's most dominating competitor. This may finally be Glidden's year to win the Southern Nationals. All the elements seem to be coming together for career win number 53. Glidden was not the only driver with designs on a Southern Nationals title. 15 other races had their own feelings on who would leave Atlanta a winner. For Larry Morgan, his chances ended in the first round. However, he had shown great promise through the beginning of the year, and despite being a new team in a competitive sport, he had shown he could match up with the top aces. Time will tell if he will be one. As for the man in the spotlight, Bob Glidden, he would take the race one round at a time.
Oldsmobile against Ford, Don Coombs against Bob Glidden. In Don Coombs' red lights, he leaves the starting line too soon. Bob Glidden's got an automatic win and an advancement into round number 2 at the Southern Nationals.
By this point in the season, all the teams, including Bob Glidden's, have gotten the bugs worked out of their equipment, and winning now will depend more and more on driver ability.
Reaction time is very, very crucial with this type of a car. You're on a 4/10 pro tree, and the closer you get to a 4.0 light, the better off you're going to be. And you have to have your act together. There isn't any in between. You have to be on the tree.
And just as a mechanic can tune a car, a driver can tune his body for maximum performance on the starting line.
I think that playing a lot of handball and, playing a little golf or whatever, getting out there and doing a little athletically inclined type of sport does help. I think that most of the guys in pro stock, you'll find that play a little basketball, do a little this, do a little that, to keep themselves in shape, physical shape.
The second round of racing promises to be full of driver battles, none more intense than that of Bob Glidden and Warren Johnson. For Johnson, every race against Glidden now has double importance. Victory means more championship points and a psychological edge. On the other hand, defeat, especially in the early rounds, can be doubly damaging. For now, it appears Glidden has the edge over WJ. But Warren knows if he's to be among the top contenders at season's end, he will have to shake his slump and get back to winning. The second round also features Bruce Allen against Joe Lapone. Debuting his new Chevrolet Beretta, Lapone's focus at the Southern Nationals is on sorting the car out. Allen's Camaro may have outpowered Lapone, but the potential of the newest Chevy and the guidance of Grumpy Jenkins promise great things for Joe Lapone in the near future. For racers like Bruce Allen or Butch Leal, whose reputations are based upon their driving ability, any advantage gained over an opponent on the starting line is important.
Staging the car, at times some people think they need to play a game or two, but I don't think that's not too much anymore. They pull up there and try to race, and they're so close. When they're ready, we stage. You have to get yourself ready. Depends on, it may take 5 seconds, it may take 2 seconds, but you try to get in and get ready. You have different techniques, depends on who you're racing, what kind of style he has, so you change your style around, and of course you get both lights on and get ready and you go.
A smart racer takes nothing for granted, whether in the first round or the semifinals. Each run must be the best, maximum effort expended. Butch Leal knows he can leave nothing to chance in his semifinal meeting with Tony Christian.
The semifinals of Pro Stock at the Southern Nationals, Tony Christian moving up from the sportsman ranks a year ago in the Valenti and Earl Pontiac against the Pontiac of Butch Leal. Leal got the advantage, Leal's got the lead, Leal's got the win.
For Bob Glidden, the semifinals mean another step closer to achieving a major goal. For Bruce Allen, a semifinals appearance is a building block for the future. Today, Bruce Allen cannot step past Bob Glidden. But for Allen and car owners Rare and Morrison, the Southern Nationals are a step up, and hence a step toward fulfilling their potential. Glidden's win means he's only one race away from vindicating himself. As he prepares for the finals, Bob Glidden knows that in racing, success is a team effort. To Glidden, team and family are the same thing.
My sons have grown up in this. They are interested in mechanics. They like working in the shop. They like going to the races. They like the traveling. And drag racing has something that I think there's very few professions that have, and that is the fact that there is a place for everyone in the family, young, old, or in between. It's something that can bring a family unit together as a family unit and make you closer to one another and understand one another more. And I think that has a big draw for Pro Stock and some of the sportsman brackets, because you can include your family.
Others may talk of their crew as being as close as family members, but for Bob Glidden, it's more than a racing cliche. As he comes to the line against Butch Leal in the drama-packed finals, wife Etta and sons Billy and Rusty understand the importance of the moment to Bob.
Bob Glidden, consistently the quickest all day, gives away a slight hole shot advantage to Butch Leal. But Glidden's Ford begins to put on the power and wins the Southern National. The Atlanta jinx is over for the Glidden family.
You finally conquered Atlanta, Bob Glidden.
I'll tell you what, I not only conquered Atlanta after the episode that went on here last year, but I finally beat Leal in a final. This is the first race we've won all year. You know, I know the people at Ford and people at Motorcraft are going to be glad to see the Thunderbird come through finally.
741 to 749.
Well, I thought the track was going to be a little bit better, and I think we did make a little nicer run. That it wasn't as loose, and the car moved a little harder in first gear.
This may be the most competitive Pro Stock year we've seen in ages.
Yeah, come, let me get a guy in here. Come over here, Butch. Talk about competitive. This guy has been killing us all this year. We're going to bear down on him.
Hear that?
Here's a guy that's got a 10th on the field. He's going to bear down on us. I have to drive like crazy to stay up with him.
And he's been doing that, Steve.
Two men who have found their potential and pushed themselves to constantly sustain it. Butch Leal, a man fighting for his destiny, for the right to take his place as the one true champion. Bob Glidden, a man who has fulfilled his destiny and now finds he must defend it against men like Leal who desire it for their own. Glidden, a champion who has learned that a champion unchallenged, a champion who reigns in the absence of men like Leal, is not truly a champion. The true champion, not just one man, but rather the essence of the competition, the fiery forge that shapes the top gun.